All right, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is all about pronation and how it's probably a good thing in squats, and also how we need to stop calling all medial knee travel knee valgus. I'm just sick of every little bit of knee waver. Everyone be like, oh my God, valgus, valgus, oh no. And then we should also talk about, like, is valgus even a risk factor for knee injury? Never in my life have I seen anyone damage their ACL squatting. I mean, 2 legs on the ground, moving at slow velocities. It's just, yeah, when you actually know what tears ACLs, it's unpredictable movements, high velocities, landing on one leg, decelerating. I guess squats is a form of deceleration, but again, we're not moving that quick to begin with, so not that much deceleration. So yeah, hopefully by the end of this video, we can clear up why you don't need to worry about pronation, why it could potentially be a good thing for your squat, what knee valgus is and isn't, and just finish it off with a chat about why you shouldn't be pushing your knees out or in. You should just go up and down. Let your knees be knees. But just a quick caveat before we launch into this tirade about pronation and how it's actually a good thing in squats. If you arch the hell out of your foot, you love screwing your feet outwards, you love shoving your knees out and you're squatting big weights and it feels amazing, then don't listen to anything that I'm about to say. Just keep doing what you're doing because I'm happy that it's working for you. But if you are one of those people where your squats don't feel that good and you have been told that you need to maintain that huge arch in your foot and shove your knees out every time that you squat down, then this video is going to be really helpful for you. In between that, I'll be doing a little bit of weightlifting, maybe a little bit of bench pressing, but let's rip and tear. And so supination is when we have this arch in the foot, and then pronation is when the foot starts to flatten out and press into the ground more. And so a bit of scene setting or a little bit of context. I started getting excited about lifting heavy pretty much at the peak of Kelly Starrett's career, or maybe a little bit just prior to that. But I would say 2010 is when we hit peak knees out. And, you know, it was just this idea that, you know, universal cue, whenever you're under load or whenever you're sort of bending your knees and your hips, you want to have a huge arch in your foot and you want to shove your knees out. Because if that arch in your foot collapses, it's energy leakages, increase of injury risk, probably going to blow your knees out because they're just going to cave in. You're not going to be able to use your glutes well because you've lost your hip torque. It's not just heavy lifting where pronation has been demonized. I mean, pronation's been demonized in running for years. I mean, basically any corner of the fitness world is just freaking out over pronation and losing that arch in your foot. And it was definitely something I heard out of the horse's mouth. Like, Kelly Starrett was big on this idea of big arch in the foot and shove the knees out. It's very protective of the knee. There was all this concern, oh no, people are going to damage their ACLs from squatting or just their knees in general. Like, I don't know why they were obsessed with people doing ACLs. You really don't see many people doing their ACL under a barbell. It's a real playing sports thing. You see a decent amount of knee injuries from squatting, but yeah, this worry about the ACL, I don't know where it came from. Actually, I do know where it came from. People just trying to scare the shit out of you and sell programs and books and courses. That's where it came from. The other thing that was sort of peaking in 2010 and shortly after that was this obsession that the glutes are the primary driver of whatever movement you're doing. Like upper body, lower body. Oh, if you're trying to get your bench press up, you should probably try to activate your glutes more beforehand. Deadlift, glutes. Squat, forget about your quads, glutes, glutes, glutes. And don't get me wrong, we're pretty big on glutes here at General Physical Preparation, but there's more to a squat than just glutes. And I also don't think arching the shit out of your foot and shoving your knees out is the best way to get the glutes to do their thing. Yeah, so anyway, arching the shit out of my foot and shoving my knees out, it didn't really feel like a natural or efficient squat pattern for me. So for me in particular, I feel like where it really limited me, I could never get my knees to translate forward with a huge arch in my foot. And I also couldn't understand, everyone in the strength training world talks about pushing through the middle of your foot. But then they say that you need the big arch in your foot. And that just lifts the whole midfoot off the ground. So I don't care if you don't think being on the midfoot's important. It's just weird to emphasize this midfoot pressure so much and then simultaneously emphasize a cue that forces you to lift the midfoot off the ground. We're just looking for a coherent model at the end of the day. So as soon as I found out the link between pronation and how much more dorsiflexion that instantly grants you, on top of how it just allows you to drive your midfoot truly into the ground because it's on the fucking ground, pronation honestly solved all of my fucking issues with the squat. It was the one thing I was told to fear the most. Well, not really. People were definitely way more afraid of the knee valgus boogeyman than they were pronation, but again, they were sort of seen as these complementary actions.
Being able to lock yourself into this more dorsiflex position is such an asset in a heavy squat. When I have a look at the way that most people break down in their heaviest squats, one of the most common things we see is people's knees shooting back too early. And there's so many things that are contributing to this, but cueing people to arch the hell out of their foot maximally is only going to cause that shin to drive back earlier or prevent it from getting as far forward in the first place. So for someone who really likes that positive shin angle in your squats, both as a method to get down low into a deep position and load up the quads, also as a way to push out of the hole sort of sequentially, right? We don't just extend our knees and hips simultaneously. We actually need to extend our hips at a bit of a quicker rate than we extend our knees. Otherwise, look what happens when I rapidly extend my knees, right? I just turn my squat into a good morning. Versus, watch what happens if I maintain my shin angle, I also maintain my torso angle, all right? So we have this relationship between the shin and the torso angle where when we get spat out the back, again, things just start to go to shit. Whereas again, we maintain this more positive shin angle, that squat looks lovely.
And like, these aren't just things for squatting. You see it everywhere. You see it in Olympic lifting, you see it in sprinting, you see it in jumping. You see athletes pronating to produce a lot of force. And you see this bias of hip extension being prioritized before maximal knee extension. Like when you look at mid-stance in sprinting, again, they're propelling themselves over that positive shin angle. All the pronation comes out with the hip extension. In Olympic weightlifting, again, it's just hip extension before knee extension. Like I said, in squats, when you come up and maintain your torso angle, it's hip extension mostly before knee extension. What's really interesting about knees moving in and your arches collapsing in the middle of a squat as well is a lot of people talk about the whole justification for shoving your knees out in the first place is to get this stacking of the joints, which may or may not be important depending on your perspective. A lot of the time, the medial knee travel that you do see is people moving into a more stacked position. Like they've gone down full K-star, and then their body's forced them into a more stacked position by moving the knees in, and it's just really lining the knee up over the big toe. It's not like you need this to pronate, you just need this. Like this is still stacked over the foot, like I said, if you worry about that sort of thing. It also traps so many kids in this spiral where their knees were only coming in because they shoved them out so hard in the first place, and then their coach is yelling at them, it's like, shove your knees out harder, and then it just makes them swing in harder, and then they're just caught up in this cycle of like focusing on something that's like almost completely irrelevant to squat performance just because their coach is a neurotic cuck who's given them a bunch of outdated beliefs about human movement, when things could be so much simpler. Like, you don't even have to think about pronation. It'll happen automatically on the way down and through the hard part on the way up. All you have to worry about is, like I said, just staying over your midfoot and pushing into the ground. And now for my favorite topic, what is knee valgus really? Because it's not just inward movement of the knees or any sort of medial knee travel. Knee valgus is a specific thing. And what it is specifically is when the tibia is externally rotating. So let me clip myself. So when our tibia is rotating outwards like this, and then the femur is rotating inwards on top of this. So the two segments are twisting in opposite directions, and it's thought that this could put a lot of stress on the ACL. I mean, now even more research is sort of coming out that a lot of these valgus moments that people are witnessing when people are doing ACLs in field sports, the valgus moment happens after the ACL's already gone. So the whole thing's coming into question, like whether or not it's even a mechanism of injury. But anyway, back to pronation and how that's going to save you from knee valgus if it's something you're worried about. So pronation allows the arch of our foot to come down to the ground. It allows our shin to travel more forward. It's also going to allow it to internally rotate, to rotate in. So if your foot's pronating and your tibia's rotating in and your femur's rotating in, there's no real valgus moment occurring. It's just this symphony of internal rotation from the hip to the foot. Valgus is probably only occurring in situations where you're like really losing your base of support. So if your whole heel comes off the ground, the foot's gonna arch and maybe you'll get some external rotation of the tibia as your femur's internally rotating. But yeah, just when the whole leg is internally rotating together, That's not knee valgus. Not every bit of inward, I would say most inward knee movement isn't valgus in squats. So next time your knees move in like an inch on a heavy squat and someone calls it knee valgus, ask them to explain to you what they think knee valgus is, and they'll give you the dumbest explanation of it. They'll be like, anytime the knees move in. And then just tell them to Google it, and you just watch the expression on their face change as they realize they've just been parroting shit without looking into it for themselves. Thanks, Kelly Starrett, for turning valgus into a buzzword. Nice one, mate. I think the reason as well it's important to talk about not creating a pendulum effect with this going, oh no, so cueing knees out is wrong, so let's just go to aggressively cueing knees in. That's not the solution. The initial mistake was just getting too neurotic about things that just don't really relate to the demands of the task that directly. Again, we're trying to not fall forwards or backwards in a bilateral squat, and we're trying to overcome the weight and we go up. We don't need to be thinking about moving sideways. So no knees out. No knees in either. Oh my God, I can't believe I nearly wrapped up this video without talking about the glutes and like how knees out relates to the glutes, the only important muscle in the body. So the big story was that if knees go in, your glutes turn off, which is just fucking bonkers. I mean, muscles don't really turn on or off. They just produce varying amounts of tension, and they can be in more eccentric or concentric positions when they're doing that. And so yeah, when your knees come in, your glutes get longer, but they don't lose their ability to produce force. I mean, their ability to produce force might even go up because muscles' ability to produce force can change dependent on how shortened or lengthened they are. And so I'm not going to confidently stare down the barrel of this camera and say that knees moving in is going to stretch your glutes and it's going to put them in a better position to do their job. But I know for sure that knees in doesn't just mean that your glutes go to sleep and that they stop acting as a hip extensor. Probably what you're feeling when you're shoving your knees out all the time, you're just getting a real solid concentric contraction. But again, I don't know what's so special about that. It's probably not the best thing all the time. So yeah, I guess to summarize, we shouldn't demonize any movement too much because it just leads to problems down the line. People just getting neurotic about things that are perfectly safe at the end of the day. We should acknowledge where the midfoot is and how you actually get it on the ground. You pronate. We need to stop calling all medial knee travel valgus because it just scares the shit out of people. And we should also question whether valgus is really an injury mechanism or a concern for people moving at slow speeds and on two legs. Again, I think it's more of a concern moving at high speeds and when you're landing on one leg. And we need to remember that your glutes don't just magically shut off when they lengthen a little bit. That's bananas. All right, anyway, if you want to learn more about how I think about training and get better results with your clients, check out GPP Level 1. One payment, you get access for life. You join a community of other coaches who are legends. You get direct access to me to ask any questions you like. And there's a whole bunch of great pre-recorded content so you can develop world-class strength and conditioning plans for your clients. But if you don't want to get stuck into that, maybe get stuck into some of the back catalogue of videos I got on here, and I'll see you in a couple of days with a new video.